Hi there, I'm the _twig and I like analysing game rules. A couple of days ago I was talking with one of my other DM friends about how we adapt our DMing styles to various tables and players, and we got onto the subject of Magic the Gathering's famous Timmy, Johnny and Spike. For any of you unfamiliar with them, Timmy, Johnny and Spike are three psychographic profiles, or more simply player types, that WotC use in R&D when designing cards. Whenever they release a new set of Magic cards, they make sure that some of the new cards appeal to each of these three categories. In another sense, Timmy, Johnny and Spike are three target demographics. I myself have slightly different target demographics. I tend to target people who are hyper-intelligent Ubermenschen, just like these guys who support me on Patreon. They've had the knowledge of this video since I shared the original script in mid-May, and have subsequently had an audio-only version as well as early ad-free access to the final video. SK in particular is a Chad among Chads, and he never skips leg day. Anyways, me and my friend started trying to apply these three psychographic profiles to our players, and we found that, for the most part, they mapped pretty well. Now for those of you who already know about these player types, you may or may not be aware that they have some pretty extreme stereotyping. I'm going to try and avoid that here and show off all of the different varieties of each player, starting with Timmy. Timmy, or if they're a girl, Tammy, plays D&D for the spectacle, for the excitement, so that they can feel cool. How a Timmy goes about this can vary quite a lot. Some Timmys want to deal massive damage or roll a bunch of dice, and these types love features like Fireball and Sneak Attack. Others love variety and the unexpected, so might want to play something like a Wild Magic Sorcerer. Other Timmys might love big set pieces like dragons, and yet more might not especially care what the party is doing, as long as they're doing it together and they're all having fun. An excellent example of a Timmy is XP to level 3, in particular his Wizard and his Giga Chad characters. That's right, both of them are Timmys. The Wizard is what's known as a power gamer Timmy. That's the type that loves the excitement of big numbers. The Giga Chad, on the other hand, is a social Timmy who wants to make the game as fun as possible for everyone. DMing for a Timmy is actually pretty easy. You just need to work out what they find exciting and then do lots of that. If they're a Timmy who loves randomness and variance, then let them roll as often as possible, and maybe give them a magic item like the Deck of Many Things. If they're a set-piece Timmy, then you should have lots of big monsters, lots of castles, and lots of ships. Right, let's say that we've got this situation where the party needs to cross a chasm, and the bridge has collapsed. Timmy might decide that he's going to run and jump across it, and he's going to use Rage to make it so that he has advantage on his athletics check. The best way to approach this is to use the rule of cool. Let them do it. Does it make sense for the barbarian to jump 25 feet across a chasm? No. But it's cool, so let them go for the jump and cling on to the other side by the tips of their fingers. That is something that will make Timmy remember the session. Now, I do want to quickly mention that there's this weird stereotype of Timmys being young or inexperienced. This is not true. Timmy can be incredibly experienced and know all of the cheesy tricks. They just think that something else will bring more spectacle to the game. Our next psychographic profile is Johnny, Jenny if they're a girl. Johnny is playing for the purpose of self-expression. They are commonly most driven by their own character. They have something in mind and they want to do it their way. Johnny might have found a really interesting combo that they want to show off. Or they might have a super in-depth character concept and they've absolutely scoured the books to find the best possible way to bring it to life. Some Johnnies might see something that is classically thought of as bad and then try their absolute hardest to bring it up to par. Other Johnnies might want to assemble a toolbox, so they have something for every situation. Johnnies often love highly customizable classes like the Warlock or the Bard, because these allow them a huge range of self-expression. I think that Treant Monk is a good example of a Johnny, specifically a combo Johnny. A lot of his builds are based around a central mechanical interaction that he thinks is interesting. Treant Monk will then try to find the best way to do that thing and search for anything else that will work with it. To DM for a Johnny, you'll normally just want to let them do their thing. They put a lot of work into their character, and they want to see it in action, performing like they expected. You don't want to get in the way or interrupt them, at least not all the time. It can be really fun for a Johnny if every so often they get caught off guard and have to make something up on the spot. It's also definitely worth talking to your Johnny about their plans, and letting them know up front if you're going to rule against anything. You might also want to just ask them if they have any magic items that they would really like to have. Okay, it's Johnny's turn to cross the chasm now. They'll sit back for a couple of minutes, look over their character sheet and see that they have 50 foot of rope and a mage hand. They'll ask if they can have the mage hand carry the rope across the chasm and tie it to the post on the other side. Tying a knot one-handed is pretty difficult though, and Johnny will probably accept that because it makes sense. So they'll go back to their character sheet for a little bit, and then ask if the mage hand could just carry the rope across and an unseen servant could tie the knot. Rule of cool is often not what a Johnny is looking for. They want things to make sense. Our last psychographic profile is Spike, whose female equivalent is also Spike, it's a genderless nickname. Spike wants to prove themselves, or achieve something. Normally they want to prove how strong they are, but there are Spikes who want to prove that they're the most knowledgeable, or prove something else. Where Timmy is interested in coolness, and Johnny is interested in uniqueness, Spike is interested in effectiveness. Some Spikes want to take other people's ideas to the absolute limit, with old favourites like Hypnotic Pattern or Aura of Protection. Others want to predict your plans and come prepared with hard counters like Protection from Evil and Good or Wind Wall. Yet more might want to prove their own skill and piloting ability with features like Battlemaster's Manoeuvring Attack and clever use of the dodge action. I think the Pack Tactics is a good example of a Spike. His videos are very focused on trying to make the best character possible, finding good options, avoiding bad options, and gaining a tactical advantage. He's an innovator type Spike, who prides himself on the ability to identify the best possible options. Now there's another common misunderstanding here that I want to clear up. Despite the fact that Spikes often want to prove how strong they are, most of the time they actually aren't interested in just steamrolling things. The majority of Spikes want to have to work for their results. Proving that they're stronger than a couple of goblins isn't much of an achievement. They want to prove that they're stronger than the whole gang of goblins and their bugbear leader. And so, as a DM, that's what you want to give them. Challenge your Spike. Make them sweat, keep them on edge, and try not to let the fight end until the very last moment. Spike is going to cross the chasm now, except he's already on the other side. He had the fly spell, that wasn't a challenge. If you wanted to really engage your Spike, you should have set it up during a blizzard, where it's hard to see the other side, and going into the open will make you prone to being blown away. Then maybe have a pack of winter wolves chasing the party, and you're set with a fun challenge for your Spike. Last thing to mention about Spike is the opposite of what I said about Timmy. Spike has a stereotype of being super optimised to the detriment of everyone else. This is also not the case. Spikes will often be more than happy to make a character based on the expected powers of the other players, and many of them will actually start feeling guilty or will self-moderate if they notice that they're taking all of Timmy's cool moments from him. Also, kind of paradoxically, some Spikes are just kind of not actually that good at the game. If this is the case, then you'll want to tailor a few situations to them, so that they can take the lead and be the best. Now, whilst there are these three psychographic profiles, they are not mutually exclusive. Many people show at least some traits of at least two profiles, although a lot of people genuinely do tend towards one rather than the others. I have a player who is a Johnny Spike, who likes choosing kind of unpopular options, finding combos with them, and then using his piloting skills to show off that he can be the best anyway. I also definitely know a Tammy Jenny, who comes up with a character concept, spends hours if not days finding the best way to replicate it, and then goes in trying to kill the monsters in the most bombastic ways possible. In the case of this player, rather than her Jenny side being based on what makes logical sense, she's based on what makes character sense. She's very much an it's what my character would do person. So those are Magic's three psychographic profiles. There's more to talk about though, because a few years after revealing Timmy, Johnny and Spike to the world, Mark Rosewater, the guy who came up with them, revealed two more profiles, called Vorthos and Mel. Rather than being psychographic profiles, these two are referred to as aesthetic profiles. They care about the fluff or the crunch. To explain the difference, let's say that we have a museum. Timmy goes to the museum to see the cool exhibits. Johnny goes because the exhibits are unique, and Spike goes because they can learn something from the exhibits. They're focused on why they go to the museum, or why they are playing D&D. The aesthetic profiles, Vorthos and Mel, are focused on what is in the museum. Is it an art museum or a science museum? These are two completely separate metrics. An art museum can focus on cool paintings, and a science museum can focus on cool spaceships. But an art museum can't focus on both cool and learning, and a cool museum can't have both paintings and spaceships. Except, obviously they can, and that's where the analogy breaks down. What I'm trying to get at is that Timmy, Johnny and Spike are profiles that care about why they play the game, either for the spectacle, the self-expression, or the achievement. Vorthos and Mel, however, care about what the game is. Let's start with Vorthos. Vorthos cares about lore. They want a game with a well-designed setting. They're the types of people who know what all of the gods look like and how to pray to them, or get super excited when you tell them that they're going to the City of Brass. Vorthos is likely to greatly appreciate the fact that the Hexblade has a cursed spectre at 6th level, so they can summon spirits from the Shadowfell. Or the fact that possession effects rely on charisma saving throws, because preventing them involves exerting your personality. Finding an example of a Vorthos was a bit tricky for me, because I'm kind of an anti-Vorthos, at least when it comes to D&D. But from a bit of searching, Esper the Bard seems like a pretty Vorthos-y channel. His videos focus on the lore and history of the Forgotten Realms, and exploring the stories and characters that exist in that setting. If you have a Vorthos in your party, you're going to want to make a strong and, probably more importantly, consistent setting. That doesn't mean making your setting hyper-realistic with a functional economy and dirty peasant serfs outnumbering significant characters 100 to 1. It means adding small details like a specific prayer, and then having another character say that same prayer again 5 sessions later, allowing your Vorthos to recognise which god that character worships without it being directly stated. I do quickly want to mention that being a Vorthos is incredibly subjective, and a person can care massively about one setting and not at all about another equally detailed setting. I, for example, do not give a damn about D&D's lore, but I'm a massive Vorthos when it comes to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, specifically the radio series. And I love the setting of Trails in the Sky so much that I consider Trails of Cold Steel to be a crime against humanity. What the hell are those? And why on earth is it making that noise? Right, I'm going to stop now before I go on too much of a tangent about Trails lore and how awesome it is that all of Estelle's crafts incorporate helix movements despite her not being an 8 Leaves 1 Blade practitioner or even using the same weapon. Cassie's is just cool like that. The other aesthetic profile is Mel. Mel cares explicitly about the mechanics and the game's design. Mel wants to see things that have been designed with intent, in a clever way. In other words, Mel likes analysing game rules. Mel loves the fact that Herringun's Rabbit Hop works as a pseudo-disengage and a movement extension, allowing you to get out safely even if you've already used up all of your movement and your action. They might also like the fact that Jump, Levitate and Fly are 1st, 2nd and 3rd level spells that give similar effects, but each is a better version of the last. They'll also be huge fans of monsters like the Starspawn, which have synergies with each other, meaning that they get stronger when different types of Starspawn are together. A really good example of a Mel is Matt Colville, who is incidentally also objectively the sexiest D&D tuber. That beard is divine. Matt makes DMing advice videos, and honestly, he's probably the best on the platform at it. If you're a DM and you want to get better, why the hell are you watching this? Matt has way better videos for you. He focuses his videos on finding ways to make DMing easier, more efficient, more interesting, and more elegant. He changes how the game is played to make it more fun for him and his players. Adapting your DMing style for a Mel is probably the hardest of all of the player types in this video, simply because it takes the most out of game effort. Two things that do work though are using synergistic monsters and making the villain's plan clever. An example of synergistic monsters could be a group of red dragonborn warriors riding giant striders. The striders heal when they take fire damage, so the dragonborn can both hurt you and heal their pets with a single breath weapon. As for making the villain's plan clever, try to think of some ways that it could go wrong, and then add a contingency or make a change to the plan to patch that fault. Maybe you could even have the plan reliant on the party trying to thwart it, by getting the MacGuffin out of a place that the villain couldn't normally access, or something like that. As I said, Mel is really hard to DM for, but at least in my experience, they're also probably the profile that you need to worry about the least. Mels often get most of their Mel time out of the game, reading over the rulebooks in their spare time. Many Mels don't actually play at all, and a fair few want to DM more than they want to play. Now, the last thing that I want to say about the two aesthetic profiles is to reiterate that they are not psychographic profiles. A player is not just a Vorthos. Aesthetic profiles are interested in what the game is, but without a why from a psychographic profile like Timmy, they have no real reason to play. Also, not every player has an aesthetic profile, and they are not mutually exclusive, nor are they opposites. The opposite of a Vorthos is not a Mel, it's an anti-Vorthos, someone who is apathetic towards the lore. Being disinterested in lore does not make you interested in mechanics, and you can be interested or disinterested in both. And those are the player types that Mark Rosewater created for Magic. I think that they actually do a really good job of exploring how you can appeal to different people. Whilst they were made for a card game, they actually work really well for a role-playing game too, up to a point. You see, I think that there's still something really fundamental missing here, and it's all to do with what makes role-playing games different from other games: the role-playing. Whilst Timmy, Johnny and Spike explore why a player wants to play, and Vorthos and Mel explore what a player wants to play, there's nothing here exploring how a player wants to play. For that reason, I have my own contribution that I would like to make. The interactive profiles, Charlie and Rowan. Charlie is an actor. They put on a voice, wear their arms around, and decide what to do based on the character that they are playing. Earlier, I mentioned my friend, a Tammy Jenny, who often uses the line, "That's what my character would do." That's actually a Charlie trait. Charlie has the most fun when they are pretending to be someone else. An excellent example of a Charlie is Laura Bailey from Critical Role. When she's playing Jester, her body language and even her posture completely changes. The way that she talks and what she says are Jester talking, not Laura. DMing for a Charlie is really simple, although depending on your own Charlie-ness you may find it pretty hard. All you have to do is give them lots of opportunities to act, have lots of scenes where they can behave however it is that their character would behave. If their character used to be a sailor, have some sessions on a ship. If their character is afraid of snakes, let the party fight a cult of Yuan Ti. Having lots of NPCs for the Charlie to talk to is almost always a good idea, but make sure to read their backstory and let them use any skills that they may have learned, or incorporate people that they have relationships with. Charlie is what the internet typically considers to be the best kind of player, although I don't think that's necessarily true. Loads of players can make the game more fun without extreme amounts of acting, such as by coming up with weird plans, or allowing all of the other players to shine, and that's where Rowan comes in. Rowan is probably the least discussed player type in all of D&D, but they are really common. I've DM'd for a lot of people, and many different groups, and I'd say probably a fifth of all players I've had have been Rowans. Charlie is the interactive profile that plays by acting, but Rowan is the interactive profile that plays by watching. Rowan is a passive player. They let everyone else do their thing and are happy being taken along for the ride. On their turn they will run 30 feet, make an attack, they crit so they'll use smite I guess, and then they'll pass to the next player. Rowan has the most fun watching all of the stuff that the other players are doing. They aren't uninterested. In fact, Rowan is often the most invested player in the campaign. They just want to experience the game as a spectator. I love a good Rowan, because they are absolutely amazing for gauging how interesting your game is. If Rowan is watching and listening, then you're doing good. If their attention is wandering though, then you'll want to change scenes soon. If Rowan isn't interested, then odds are the rest of your players aren't either. You'll often see people on Reddit asking how they can make this one player interact more and speak in character. This is entirely the wrong thing to do with a Rowan. The best thing to do with Rowan is to let the other players shine, and then occasionally offer them the chance to join in, but never force them to join in. You should always give Rowan an out. It's also worth allowing your Rowan more time for things like backstory, rather than asking for it all up front. They'll often want to adapt or incorporate things that come up in the game, and decide on their character's history as they progress. If you've ever considered doing something like a campaign diary or an end of session write-up, Rowan will probably love it. If you ask them, they may even want to do it themselves. By their very nature, I don't really have a good example of a Rowan. They don't tend to stand out, nor do they even want to stand out. And for most people, they don't make for good watching material. I hope that my description will be enough for you to go on though. The last thing I want to say about Rowan is that once you know what to look for, they are probably the easiest player to spot. You might actually be able to spot them before the campaign even starts. Like with Vorthos and Mel, Charlie and Rowan are not psychographic profiles. A player is not just a Charlie, nor are they just a Rowan. They don't even necessarily have to be either. There's probably more interactive profiles out there that I haven't considered, simply because I've only really been thinking about Charlie and Rowan for about a week. And that's it. 3 psychographic profiles, Timmy, Johnny and Spike, 2 aesthetic profiles, Vorthos and Mel, and my own 2 interactive profiles, Charlie and Rowan. To just go over everyone one last time, Timmy plays for the spectacle and excitement, Johnny plays for the self-expression and creativity, and Spike plays to prove himself and achieve something. All players have at least one of these profiles. Next we have Vorthos, who wants a game with strong and consistent lore, and Mel, who wants a game with clever and elegant mechanics. Players can be one, both, or neither of these, and they stack on top of the psychographic profiles. Finally, Charlie plays the game by acting, and Rowan plays the game by watching. Players might be one of these, or they might be neither, but I don't think that they can be both. Again, these stack with all of the other profiles. Hopefully this has been even remotely useful and intelligible, and not just me rambling about nonsense for however long. What do you reckon you are? And if you're a DM, how about your players? Personally, I think I'm probably a Jenny, Mel, Charlie with undertones of Timmy. I love looking through and understanding the mechanics, building characters to get them as close as possible to a concept, and then acting that out. But I also put a lot of effort into making sure that the whole table is having a good time. If you've enjoyed this horribly technical analysis of the meta player, make sure to subscribe, just in case I ever feel the calling to do something like this again. Bye!